watching the It's Her Time podcast with Cody and Jess. Welcome back to the It's Her Time podcast. My name is Cody Sanders, and I'm a holistic health practitioner. And I'm joined today for a really special episode with Megan Johnson of The Emily Effect. Today, we're going to talk all about postpartum depression and recovery. And this month in May is known as Maternal Mental Health Awareness Month. And so we wanted to kick it off with the right kind of conversations because I know many of us have been affected or know of somebody that has been affected with postpartum depression. But before we go into this episode and into this conversation, let's join Jess for a Mixhers Girl Say.
On today's Mixhers Girl Say, we're actually going to talk some things motherhood and mothering instincts, mothering lessons that either we've received or given. It's in the time of Mother's Day. Yeah. So it's so fun. We both love bonding over the different ways that we have parented our children, the things we laugh about that we've done that were either mistakes or even being like, that was a total win.
Totally.
My kids got it. They listened. They learned something. So, Cody, have you had an experience that you're willing to share about motherhood?
Absolutely. So I would say that this was one of those things where I'm sure I'm going to have so many of you writing in and being very judgmental on my approach, but I will tell you just
better come through me first if you're going to write something mean to Cody. I'm just saying.
It's questionable, but I will just start off by saying it was a win. So you might want to take notes. Mm-hmm. So, and this will also be embarrassing to my son, but he doesn't listen to these, so we're good. So when he was a little boy going through the potty training phase, okay, this is common for little boys, the more I've learned. It was really terrifying for him to poop in the toilet. I think it was the splash. I don't know what it was. So if somebody, like if we didn't know where he was for a minute, we'd be like, I'll use his name. Where's Tucker? Mm-hmm. And we're like, where's Tucker? And we would find him sometimes like hiding behind a couch and he like would have pooped his pants. Okay. And so this just kept happening.
I'm sure a lot of moms are relating to this. It's the worst.
Yeah, like he would go number one, just fine. Number two, scary. And so
I think this is the most reserved I've ever heard Cody talking about like bodily functions. Number one.
I know.
And like, number two, usually we're like,
I know.
And anyway.
So anyhow, this just kind of kept happening. And one of the funniest times it happened is he had apparently done this at my mom's house, who has like a very nice clean home. And she had those little Kleenex, like the covers that go over the Kleenex boxes. Mm-hmm. Okay. So, there was no Kleenex box. It was just the cover sitting on the back of the toilet. And for like a week, we were smelling something terrible. But like everywhere we're looking, it's totally perfectly clean everywhere. And then we're like, this is so insane. And then we pick up the back of the thing, and there is this little turd just on the top of the toilet. Okay. So I'm like, okay, this is getting way out of
the toilet.
He pooped somehow and then hid it.
So there his nose.
So brilliant, I guess, that he thought, but and thought that was a better solution. But so anyways, this kept happening. So when it happened again, I was like, I have got to nip this in the butt, because it's like, no pun intended.
Literally nip it in the butt.
But he pooped his pants. And then I was like, oh, you know what? We need to clean you up. And so I'm like, we got to get in the tub. But I made the water just as icy cold as I possibly could make that water. And he was screaming and crying. And I was like being so loving and like, I know, it's so cold, but we can only clean the poo-poo off of your bum with cold water. We're just going to have to endure it. We're just going to have to endure it because this is the only way we can clean this off. Last time he pooped his pants. So there you go.
This is what our team does when we agree with something. Mm-hmm. This is reminding me of an experience I had the other day. So my kids, they take thermoses to school. I don't even know why I ever started this. Why did I ever start thermoses? Because then they're so, honestly, Mom Fell was ever being like thermoses because then they're spoiled and they like hot food, which I actually love sending them with.
You feel good. You feel good sending good hot food. Yes.
For sure.
Yes.
But it's also a lot of work. So But you're right. It does feel good to like send them with a good meal. And there's just effort behind it. And some mornings I'm like, I'm so happy I'm cooking this for you. So the problem with thermoses is that when it comes to a weekend or, I pick them up after school and they go straight to sports and all these things. And we get home at the end of the day and they bring in their backpacks. And I'm like, okay, clear out your backpack. They will sometimes forget. So thermoses will stay in their backpack. And I'm not the mom that will do, I think this is totally fine. I'm like, if your backpack is put away, I don't go through it. If you don't give me something out of it, if you don't give me the paper you need me to sign and it's not signed, like, I'm not checking for you.
Sure.
Sorry. I forgot.
That's another good mom move right there.
I'm like, I'm sounding heartless.
No.
So the thing is, after a long weekend of a thermos sitting in a backpack or like sitting in the back of a car and like rolling around in the heat and just whatever, you open up that thermos, it is death, the torture. And I'm like, you know what, kids? I am so sick of cleaning out your disgusting thermoses, like over the sink, like, And I'm like, you know what? You guys got to clean your own thermoses now. I don't care how many days they've been, who knows where. You clean your thermos every day. This is the new rule in our house. Guess what they no longer do? Leave their thermos places. They're like home from gymnastics, cleaning out that thermos. They're like, because they had to clean out disgusting thermoses one time. And I'm like, all right, I should have done that a long time ago, but it worked.
Natural consequences.
Natural consequences.
Big believer.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you so much for listening. Now we'll get into the episode.
Mixhers is a company made for women by women. Each of our products have been carefully and lovingly crafted to support you in all stages of your life, providing you with the optimal health you deserve. Each ingredient we handpick is 100% all natural, backed by science, and chosen specifically to better your life physically, mentally, and hormonally. Each product empowers your body to take charge of its monthly hormonal shift and flows, empowering you to live life to the fullest. Let Mixhers take care of your needs from sunup to sundown, and you take care of the rest. Check us out at mixhers.com, Mixhers.
All right, Megan, it's so nice to have you here. I know you and I have been friends and I love the Emily Effect, and I have like a special place in my heart for those of you that are involved with the Emily Effect. But I'd love for you to introduce yourself to our audience and tell the audience a little bit about you and about the Emily Effect.
Awesome. Yeah. So my name is Megan Johnson. I myself am a mother of 4 boys. So just trying to keep up with them is what I spend a lot of my time doing. I'm also a therapist. I have a master's in social work and I'm trained in clinical hypnotherapy. So I am really passionate about mental health. I love hiking. I love the outdoors. I love traveling and just love hanging out with friends and connecting with people. And especially on the topic of mental health, that's something that I'm really passionate about.
Yeah, such an expert. Yeah, and a fun person to hang out with too. So tell me a little bit about what the Emily Effect is, because that is kind of what is made it so that you are here today to talk on the subject of postpartum depression.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the Emily Effect honors my late sister, Emily Dykes. She passed away about 7 years ago. She struggled with postpartum anxiety and she had her 5th baby. And after having her 5th baby, she experienced some anxiety that she had never experienced with her previous deliveries and with her previous children. And it was just different. It kind of took our family off guard. And, part of it was that she, during the delivery process, there were some issues and some trauma. And so I definitely looking back, that obviously had a lot to do with it. But during those first few weeks after she had her 5th baby, Trey, she was really struggling with sleeping. She was struggling with nursing more than she usually had. She just kind of became very fixated on things that if they didn't go the way that they were supposed to, she just had this heightened anxiety about it. And there was this restlessness. And I think a big key was that she was really struggling to sleep. And, we all, especially with different, if we've had multiple children, we can experience different things after each baby. And I would say that looking back that she, had baby blues, maybe had some ups and downs with her mental health here and there at different times in her life. But this time it was really different. And it took us all off guard. It was overwhelming. to the point where we just felt like she needed help. But her husband was so awesome. He was very supportive. And they reached out to their OB, looked at getting in some medication, and just kind of did the steps that we all try to do.
Right.
Maybe,
the things we know to do, I guess. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Talk to a therapist. And so, basically she went through a year of ups and downs.
Wow.
Battling this anxiety. And it was really a struggle to find the right help. And, there were pockets of good help at different times, but it kind of just felt disjointed, and it felt, it was just a struggle to find resources that were specific to postpartum,
right?
To postpartum anxiety and what she was going through. So the short of it is she just went through these ups and downs for about a year until it came to a head almost a year after she had Trey. She had Trey in March of 2015, and come like January of 2016, just this anxiety, when it would come back, it would come in cycles. And there would be times when we thought, we're kind of out of the woods and that she was doing better, but it would just cycle, which is pretty typical.
Right. That makes sense.
And so in January of 2016, she struggled to the point where she needed to be hospitalized, and she spent 10 days in an inpatient facility here in Utah. And this was it was such a difficult experience, even for our family. Like, we just had never experienced anything like this before. And it was traumatic to go in the hospital.
I bet.
It was scary. She had both good and negative experiences in the hospital. But when she came out, she was doing better. We were really hopeful. We kind of, again, thought we were kind of in the clear again.
Right.
And could move forward.
Hope. Yeah.
For sure. And then a couple weeks later, of course, the anxiety returned again. And on this particular day when she was struggling, she went to spend time with my parents, just as a way to kind of have a break. And they had already had a little weekend trip planned, and she was going to go with them. Yeah. And while she was riding in the car with my dad on the freeway, she experienced a panic attack. She had been having those, but this one was just very severe. And I don't know, I always feel like it's important to mention when someone has a panic attack, it's like having an out-of-body experience. There's kind of different degrees and levels of them. But this was a panic attack where she was not in touch with reality. She was scared. She was in that fight or flight mode and didn't feel safe because she was so overwhelmed with this anxiety. And so she tried to get out of the car, and my dad was trying to pull over. She was able to get out of the car as he did, and she ran up the freeway in this disoriented state. And unfortunately, there was a semi truck that came along at that time and wasn't able to avoid hitting her, and it took her life. And it was just something for our family that even in days after her passing, we had people reaching out to us. One mom in particular, I remember saying, because I heard your sister's story, I'm going to reach out and get help today. Her story was all over the news. And we just knew early on that we wanted to share her story.
Right.
And that this was something that so many moms were struggling with, and that it wasn't talked about enough. And we wanted to share her story in hopes that we could improve resources, that we could end the stigma behind these challenges with maternal mental health, and that we could really just kind of change, not only on like a community level with our resources, but just also in our families, in our homes, that we can talk about this topic. And so we created this foundation in her name, the Emily Effect, being named because of the effect that she had on people in her life. She was amazing. And just because we wanted to affect change with her story.
Yeah, it's just such a positive approach to something that was so tragic for so many of you. But I just know personally, like just meeting so many women who've already been affected for good, with just having the awareness and knowing that there are resources out there and people that understand, and so this is why we want to have this conversation, just because I feel like there is a stigma around depression in general, but even postpartum depression, it's something that is very common. There are different reasons that women experience postpartum depression. My background, as a nutritional therapist and a functional nutritionist, is a lot of it can be from, nutritional deficiency, which is then going to cause hormone imbalance. But there's so much more that adds to it.
Right.
I've been talking at the beginning of this episode, I mentioned that we're going to talk about postpartum depression, but you've been mentioning postpartum anxiety. And I don't think that's a term that I'm necessarily very familiar with. Is it something that's kind of in the same family? Is it the same thing, or is it totally different? I mean,
Yeah, it's different. And this is such an important topic to address when we're talking about maternal mental health, is because a lot of people just think postpartum depression and they picture a mom who can't get out of bed and can't function. But really, there's a wide spectrum that can happen with our mental health when we're going through that pregnancy and delivery experience. And we have what are called perinatal mood and anxiety disorders.
Okay.
So that kind of broadens that spectrum. And perinatal meaning it can occur an onset during pregnancy or after the baby comes. And that can include postpartum anxiety, PTSD, postpartum OCD, postpartum psychosis. And so there's a spectrum of challenges, just like many mental health issues that we experience, they can happen postpartum as well. But it's so important to understand how they manifest and how to better treat them in the postpartum period, because they're a little bit different and there's different challenges that can happen and different factors that both professionals, family members, and that we ourselves need to understand so that we can effectively address these challenges.
Yeah. So are there certain things that we should be kind of paying attention to during pregnancy or maybe right after delivery that should be like telltale signs, like warning signs that we need to be aware of? Is there anything that is obvious, or what should we be looking for?
Yeah, I think one thing for sure is to be aware, of course, if you've had a history with your mental health, or if you've had a history with struggling with hormone changes, right? Like with periods, with birth control, those kind of things. When women kind of struggle and have more extreme reactions to those hormone changes, that makes us more susceptible. But I think things to be watching for are, number one, I think to educate yourself. And this is why we're doing the work that we're doing. And hopefully these are conversations that we're having with our daughters and even with our sons and family members as they're growing up. But I think things to watch for are just simply not feeling like yourself.
Yeah.
You know, I could go through a list of symptoms for each of these things, right? And it's good to research and educate yourself on that. And that's what I would encourage. But really it comes down to, if you're not feeling like yourself, and if you are not functioning in the way that you normally would, especially if it's affecting your relationships, I think, unfortunately, a lot of women are able to function, but it's costing them everything. And so, again, we sometimes picture postpartum as somebody who can't function, someone who's really sad. But most women who are struggling with these things are actually functioning, but it's costing them everything, and it's having an impact in other areas of their lives. And so, I think just being aware of your risk factors, talking to your friends and family about it ahead of time too, about what will I do if I experience something on this, spectrum.
Kind of have a plan in place, and then having the communication, the education, but also just trusting your own instincts. And I think that's something that we talk a lot about on this podcast and in this community, is how important it is for us to understand that anything that feels off, or the symptoms that maybe we feel, are our body's way of trying to communicate with us. And I think as women, and just probably people in general, but I know as women especially, I don't know, we've been trained to kind of brush aside anything that feels off and just think, oh, it's just me, it's got probably no big deal. And I don't want to be dramatic, and I don't want to, be a burden on anybody and make a big deal about this. But I mean, I feel like we need to give ourselves permission to be very in tune and really pay attention to what's happening, internally, mentally, and physically, and give awareness to ourselves too, and then be willing to talk about it and know that you're not going to be considered a burden or a crazy person if you are experiencing feelings of anxiety or feelings of depression, or just that kind of not feeling like yourself, And so yeah, I feel like hopefully having these kinds of conversations at least changes that perception and helps us give ourselves permission to seek out help and to seek out answers and solutions.
I agree. Yeah. Well said.
Well, thank you. I mean, I think it goes with anything with our health. And I think sometimes we can really get behind supporting somebody that has a physical ailment, but sometimes it's something that is, like we talked about, a little stigma when it comes to mental health. It's something that we don't feel like we should talk about. We feel uncomfortable talking about it and feel embarrassed about talking about it. But it's very common. It's not something that is like this rare thing that happens only once in a while. And I wish I had a stat, and maybe you do, of how many women have postpartum depression or anxiety or some kind of a mental. Go ahead. Do you have that?
I do.
Oh, amazing. Yeah. Of course you do.
These perinatal mood and anxiety disorders, we call them PMADs for short.
PMADs.
They are the most common complication of childbirth. And up until I feel like the last several years, it's been the least talked about. We're screened for all these other things during pregnancy and after, but, screening for mental health complications, again, we're getting better at it, but it's something that we didn't talk about as much. But here in Utah, we have new data. It'll be about 1 in 3 women that are diagnosed with postpartum depression. 1 in 5 will be diagnosed with one of these PMADs that I just mentioned. And so very common. Sometimes I feel like those rates are a little bit higher because of underreporting or something that we're not always often sharing. But I think the most important thing to remember is these are the most common complication of childbirth.
Yeah. Okay. So there we go. Like it's something that's so common, and you're right. It probably is being underreported. So it could even be higher rates, but just the fact that alone, like, so when you are going to like your well visits and things like that, hopefully your healthcare, practitioner is doing this type of screening, is asking you the right kinds of questions. And if they're not, then are there resources that you can then look for on your own? Is there, is the Emily Effect a good place to come? Or okay.
Yeah.
Tell me
Emily Effect is a great place to come. We have a specific resources section on our website where we will link you to resources. There have been some really cool changes that have occurred in the last few years. There was funding that came from maternal mental health a few years ago here in Utah as a result of maternal mental health complications being a serious statewide health issue.
Yeah.
And so we've had funding for more resources that way. And one of the things that has come about is there's a website, maternalmentalhealth.utah.gov.
Okay.
And this is an amazing website where you can go in and you can search by your location, by type of provider, by your insurance, all these things, and find resources that are specific to you. In your area and your needs, right? And then we have PSI Utah, or just, if you're not here local in Utah, just Postpartum Support International. That's what PSI stands for. Get on their national website or just find your state website. And they have on there what are called PSI coordinators. Okay. And these are professionals who are trained in maternal health. They are often moms who have experienced a postpartum challenge themselves. And they can guide you and walk you through resources and just be a listening ear. But we have so many more, amazing resources here in Utah that are specific to moms, treatment centers, things like that moms can go and get help. This is a big change that I've seen occur in the last 7 years since we lost Emily.
Yeah. And I'm sure you've had a lot to do with helping that become the case. And these are probably resources that you really hoped for your sister to have. Yeah. And, but there's hope out there now for those that are dealing with this now or in the future. And that's such a huge, amazing accomplishment I'm sure you're very proud of. And I'm sure your sister is very proud of you as well.
I appreciate that.
Amazing. Yeah. So, yeah. Well, tell me more a little bit about the things that you do day to day, because I know that you, like as a therapist, you talk with women, and we don't even need to make it just about, postpartum, but tell me some of the things that you love to help women know that helps them to be able to take care of their mental health. What are some of the best things that we can be doing?
Yeah, with the Emily Effect especially, this is one of those times when social media can be such a great thing. It can be a double-edged sword sometimes. And so using that to just to share stories, that's one thing that I try to do, whether it's on the Emily Effect or as I'm working with clients. I think being able to share stories and connect people that way. I think a big thing is expectations. And being aware of what our expectations are as women, as moms, and where those expectations are coming from. I think a lot of times we place undue burden on ourselves because of the unrealistic, quite frankly, expectations that we have about ourselves. And sometimes we're not even aware of what those expectations are, but sometimes we feel, we're not feeling good enough, we're not falling short, or we feel like we're falling short and we feel overwhelmed. And so I find myself both with the Emily Effect, talking with friends, or whether it's professionally talking about what are those expectations and are they realistic, and looking at our thinking and being mindful and being able to modify that thinking. I think really giving women permission to take care of themselves, which is, I love what you do. And as I think where our missions align is how important it is, like you mentioned earlier, to have that awareness. And we're often so focused on taking care of other people. We wear so many hats that we often fall to the bottom of our priority list. And so a lot of it comes back to simple mindfulness and learning self-care, taking care of yourself, being educated so that you know maybe when you need to reach out and get help, those kind of things. But I think one of the biggest things I've seen in the work I've done is just the power of us all being vulnerable and sharing our stories. And that's why I love sharing Emily's story. And since her passing, I've been really passionate about helping other moms to share their stories through some of the work that we do at the Emily Effect. And I just think that that's, we can talk diagnoses and checklists and symptoms and things like that. But I think that when we're talking one-on-one with a friend, or we're sharing our story on social media, or it can come in so many forms, I think it just helps to connect us as humans in this human experience that we're having, and helps us to realize like there's so many reasons why we can experience these complications, especially postpartum. And a lot of women feel shame and blame when it actually makes sense that you're experiencing these things because you've gone through extreme hormone changes, your brain's changing, you're not sleeping, you're adjusting to having a baby. And so I just love, at the end of the day, having conversations and help people to have conversations about it.
And just feeling like the permission and just a safe place to be vulnerable. And those that are able to do that on their social media, those are the ones that I'm most drawn to because they're real. When we're vulnerable, then that's just showing our real self. And I think sometimes that's rare on social media. And so it sometimes maybe plays into these false like expectations of how pregnancy should be and how recovery after, delivery should be and all of that. But I love that, just being kind of in tune with your mental state. And so, for me, I don't know what you do on a daily, daily basis, but journaling is something that I have found very, very helpful to just kind of check in with myself and see kind of what these little thought patterns are. And it helps me to be able to recognize if there's something that kind of feels like it's changed. There's a little, something's changed in my thought pattern. Also just finding time to be quiet and sit in meditation, I feel like is something that is very beneficial no matter, what phase of life you're in. But I feel like that's something that is very important. Is this something that you teach your clients?
For sure. I'm like nodding my head because I'm like, when I'm talking about mindfulness, those are wonderful ways to practice mindfulness. And it can, it can come in all forms, but I especially love meditation, and there can be different ways to do that, right? There's lots of great apps out there. It can sometimes just be taking a quiet moment to yourself. It's just stopping and being aware of how you're thinking, like not always feeling like it has to be such a formal way. Right. But just, I think we just live in such a fast-paced world, and we're having so much, information thrown at us all the time that we need to take a step back, whether that's turning off the car while we're waiting in the carpool line, or if it's taking some time to use a meditation app, those kind of things. And so I think in addition to that, just getting movement in your life. And I think a lot of women feel overwhelmed that like, I need to work out for an hour or 2 hours a day and it has to look like this, but like just moving your body, right? That can look like going for a 10-minute walk or taking a few, in the wintertime, taking a few extra trips up and down the stairs, things like that. But movement is huge.
Movement is medicine.
It is.
It really helps to release those happy, feel good, neurotransmitters, those happy hormones.
Yeah.
So important getting that sunshine in.
Yep. I was just going to mention that too.
Yeah.
Yep.
And, I feel like, you mentioned it's so true. Women, we are prone to like put everybody first and kind of put ourselves last. And doing some of these things might seem like we don't have time for that. That's something that's a low priority. But all of these little self-love actions are like putting an oxygen mask on ourselves first, right?
Yeah.
And I know that phrase gets used a lot, but that is truly what it is. And so I feel like we need to give ourselves permission and make it a priority because that little time of quiet, is just maybe gives you a little better perspective of like, this is who I am. This is where I'm at right now in my life. And maybe you get the little nudge or the whispering, like maybe you need to seek a little help, or maybe you need some support in your life, or you got this or whatever. But I feel like if we don't have those times that are quiet and we can kind of receive our own internal messaging and be aware of our internal messaging, sometimes we can miss that. And the more we kind of push that aside, I have found that that's often leads to this sense of anxiety and a lot of depression and things like that because we forget to touch base, with our own intuition.
For sure. I love that you mentioned too, like it might mean seeking more help, right?
Yeah.
And so sometimes we can be doing the things that we know that can help us. I know when I go through my dips and my cycles that I can sometimes be doing these things and they don't feel as effective, or I kind of feel like there's maybe this fog around me, right? And so there can be different. It might mean needing to look at the biology, right? And nutrition and medicine and those kind of things. That might mean maybe there's some deeper things going on that you need to go and talk about and work through and get some help working through it's, whether or not it's through trauma or just getting some help with your relationship, things like that. There's so many factors, but of course, I'm a huge advocate for, for therapy and reaching out and getting help. We're so quick to reach out and get that help when we're experiencing a physical health issue, that we have so many great resources and knowledge now to help us with our mental health that why should therapy be any different? And it should be just as normal as going to our doctor. And at some point in our lives, we should all be going to therapy.
I think we all need therapy, truly.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it's important. Again, like this is why I want to have these conversations. I feel like it's getting better because I know that like when I was growing up, I know that that was something that was considered like you would, if you had a therapist, that was like, we don't talk about that, right?
Yeah.
And now I feel like it's much more the norm. And I'm so happy to see things going in that direction because I feel like it's like having a personal trainer for your mind, right?
Yeah.
There's nothing to be ashamed of. We all need that. It's about holistic health, right? And so you have to include, you know, the mental health as well as the physical and the spiritual health. And so there are professionals like Megan that are here to understand how to help you work through, you know, trauma or help you work through some of these, you know, unhealthy thought patterns and things like that. So we're grateful for that.
Yeah. Lots of resources. Let's use them, utilize them. Why not?
Absolutely.
Don't need to suffer alone, right?
Right? We do not need to suffer, period. But we especially don't need to suffer alone. And especially, you know, I just feel like as women, that's something that we really can kind of unite and decide that we're going to really rally around each other. We just are natural. We just love to come together and connect. That's something I feel like that's natural as women to do. And I feel like this is something that as a community, that's something we need to be doing around our new moms, around the moms that have just had babies that are like maybe going through different hormonal shifts in their body, or different lifestyle changes. I mean, there's just so much going on after you've had a baby that we just need to rally and not just think it just needs to happen like the week after the baby's born. Like it's just rally, check in on each other, ask questions, pay attention and observe, and just be there as somebody that's an easy resource, you know, somebody that can be there for you. And also, you know, be aware of the resources that are also around. If you don't know exactly how to support your loved one who may be suffering with postpartum anxiety or postpartum depression, these are the resources that you can share with them. You can educate yourself, but you can also share them with the ones that you love. And so we're going to put all of the ways that you can connect with Megan and the Emily Effect in our show notes.
Awesome.
And there's some amazing things that I would love for you to tune into. They've got some incredible stories that they have shared on video that I've been able to see at different events and things like that. It's something that was very like just inspiring and helped me to understand a little bit better about what women are going through if they are experiencing postpartum anxiety or postpartum depression, and a lot of hope too. I feel like that was something that I took from seeing some of these videos and listening to you speak and what we've been able to talk about today in this conversation. So
I appreciate that.
Yeah. Anything else you want to share with the audience?
I just think, you know, I feel like whenever I have the opportunity to share, I know there's somebody out there listening who's struggling and who's wondering, you know, what to do, who's maybe been stuck in some shame or maybe stuck in feelings of overwhelm, and it's hard to know what to do. And I would encourage someone who, if they're listening today, just to simply take a step to tell someone. Yeah. It starts with telling somebody that you trust, whether that's a spouse, a friend, a professional. And that can be hard to do, but know that there are people around you that love you and that want to support you. And, you know, I think we get tricked into thinking that we're going to feel this way long-term and all the time. And that gets very discouraging and hopeless. But know that this is something that you're experiencing for many different reasons. It's not your fault, but that it's not something that you're going to experience forever.
Right.
And that, you know, it's simply reaching out and talking to somebody and then taking it a step at a time, right? But letting people around you support you, whether you're really experiencing something extreme that you've never experienced with your mental health, or you're just kind of overwhelmed as a mom and needing some extra help. Like, it is okay for us as women to ask for help and to talk about the things that we go through with the people that we love and trust.
Thank you so much, Megan. That was beautifully said. And I hope that somebody listening or tuning in is needing to hear this and has felt supported and heard and loved, most importantly. We appreciate that you share your sister's story and have taken such a hard thing in your life and are taking it and turning it into something positive and helping so many women be able to know that they're not alone, that there is hope, and there's a lot that we can do about this. So thank you so much for tuning in, and thank you for being a guest on our show today. Please go to our show notes, go look at the things that are available to you. We're going to link all of the website and all the things that you can refer to for extra information about the Emily effect, or just to get to know and follow along with Megan. And it's worth your time. Share it with the girls in your life, because sharing is caring, and we all know somebody who is struggling in this area and can use a little extra love and support. So until next week, I hope you guys have a very happy and healthy week, and we appreciate you tuning in so much. So until then, see ya.